Thank you very much for inviting me today to talk about a subject I'm really passionate about. And clearly, by this turnout, there's a few people interested in idea validation. Normally, I'm on the other side. I'm normally doing the job that Michael and Stefania are doing, which is actually hosting events where people are presenting. So it's nice to have my day in the sunshine here and to talk about this subject. As a little bit of background, and Michael's mentioned a couple of things, I've been an entrepreneur now. I've been starting businesses for, well, over 35 years now. And really ever since I left university, I left education. I had a job for 6 months, and that's been the only time I've been employed. And I would say I'm probably fairly unemployable at the moment in terms of the corporate world, but I love being an entrepreneur. I love starting businesses. And in the last around 10 years, I've been involved in mentoring people at business schools, at universities and incubators, both in the UK and overseas. And I've really enjoyed helping people start businesses. And within the last few years that I've been doing mentoring, I've connected with a lot of other people that are interested in helping people launch businesses. And we put this organization 12 Ronnies together, and I can see a couple in the audience today, of people like myself that are experienced in this ecosystem of launching businesses, that want to help people and would like to take a philanthropic approach. So 12 Ronnies, or 12 Ronnies Foundation, is a philanthropic organization to help people launch businesses. And that's what we've been focused on. The reason why we're focused on this, and it's, I guess it's fairly obvious and you'll hear this from a lot of different sources. Most startups fail. Most startups fail within their first 5 years. And the data's very, very clear. It doesn't matter what territory you're in, what sector you're in. Over 80% of startups have failed within the first 5 years. And this comes from very trusted sources, from CB Insights to places like Forbes.com. Well, actually Forbes say over 90%, but let's keep it modest to 80%. Really bad failure rate. And why? This is terrible. How can that be? How can we still, all these years later, be launching businesses with such an awful failure rate? And there are a number of reasons, and that's as well as idea validation. I want to sort of just open up to talking about some of the other reasons for startup failure. And given my experience of speaking to lots of startups as well as doing them myself, I've made, by the way, so many of these mistakes I see other people make. So although they're obvious, we still tend to do them. And one of the big problems is starting a business is an opportunity to launch our dreams. We want to start a business. We've got an idea. We're launching something that we're passionate about. And so we get distracted from the main reasons to make it successful. We want to do the things that are enjoyable, the sexy things about starting a business, the branding. What am I going to call it? What color is it going to be? What website? And you get really into this idea, okay, it solves this problem. This is going to be fantastic. What product am I going to build? Okay, well, if I'm going to build this product, I haven't got any money. So what do? I need to get some investment, and I need to build a business plan and put a team together. And it's all the exciting stuff. So all of these things that we do, which aren't necessarily the best thing to do to actually make a business successful. So partly it's our own fault, but it's also partly the fault of the system. And what I mean by that is the examples, our heroes, the people in Silicon Valley, in the entrepreneurial world, they're not really setting an example for the rest of us. You know, Silicon Valley itself, that's an investor way of launching a business. There's a strong investment community. It's all about the investor and how much money they can make and how they can help startups. But this is also, this system seems to translate to a lot of the business schools, the universities, the incubators worldwide. So they look at this and they say, well, okay, we're going to put on an entrepreneurial program. We're going to help our entrepreneurs launch businesses. And so they put on this course and they take them through. But the end result of a lot of these programs is pitching to investors. So and the problem here is they're teaching startups to launch to investors, not customers here, or the customer here is the investor. So it's about, well, what does the investor want to see? What fantasy business plan do they want to see that's going to give them 10 times return on their investment in 5 years with a market penetration of X% on a $26 billion market, and all the great things that investors want to hear, but not necessarily the best things for launching a business and a startup. It's actually really distracting and the wrong route to take in most cases. And investors themselves, well, they're interested in these things called unicorns, and they're not really interested in these ideas at the launch stage. What they really want to invest in is where you've got some traction, some customers or some data around it, so that they can help you scale and they can make money. They can all make money then. So people are launching to investors when investors aren't really that interested at the idea stage. So the system's at fault as well as what we tend to do. And furthermore, just on the last part of that, so beginning of March the 23rd, 2020, the day of the first UK lockdown, when Boris announced we were locking down in the UK, was when we started in 12 Ronnies, we started our Founders and Mentors Network. And my role has been to grow this network, to grow the whole mentoring side of what we're doing. And I've really been enjoying it. But it's also highlighted to me this approach I've been talking about with investors and not about the real customers. So I invite, when people are invited onto the platform and they join the platform, I normally greet people with a message about what to do, but also how can we help you? And I would say in almost all cases, the response is, I'm looking for investment. So it's a mentoring platform, but the first response is I'm looking for investment. And I used to say it out loud and now I just translate it in my head as, so you're looking for somebody else's money to fund your great idea you can't prove anybody wants. And that's the sort of starting point. And it's really hard to get people off that track and look at customers. So with this big failure rate and what people want to do, if you delve into the data now, and I'm quite data driven. One of my companies was a data company. So I really like looking at the data and what that shows. And if you delve into the data about this massive startup failure rate, these 80% plus of failures across the board, it's pretty clear the number one reason for failure. The number two reason is a bit hazier. It's all around the team and the team that launches the business and runs the business. And then if the business starts to run out of cash and starts to fail that way, that's often an aspect of having the wrong team in place if you've got revenue. So there's a lot of aspects at the number two level around the wrong team. But the number one reason, by a long way, is no customer need, no market need. That is by far the biggest reason for failure. Once your friends and family have stopped buying, you've launched this product. Once your friends and family stop buying it, your early network, those early adopters, that's it. They've gone away, and it's really hard to get your business in the terms to pivot to a new customer group, and a lot fail. So it's the most important thing that we should be looking at because it's the biggest reason for failure. Again, most founders look at the sexy things and they're not looking at the customers. So what I'd like to really sort of talk to you about is the solution, or one of the solutions to this biggest reason for failure, no customer need, which is validating your ideas, which is finding your first customers, which is speaking to your customers, understanding what they want. And fortunately, in this digital age, we can communicate with customers. We can communicate with them at the idea stage. We could never do that pre-internet. I mean, when I first started businesses, I mean, without the internet, how would I communicate with potential customer groups about my ideas? It would be really hard to do. It's a lot easier now, and there's a lot of tools that can help us do that. But the other thing I'd like to also make clear is, and this is hard for a lot of people to get their head around, is you don't need a product at the idea stage. You don't actually need to have built it. You don't need this MVP that everybody goes on about, this minimum viable product. That's a next stage on from the idea. It's an important stage, but it's a next stage on. And too many businesses just rush into building products. And this whole Silicon Valley mantra of fail fast, well, that's just awful. That's rubbish. Why do you want to fail fast? And investors will want you to fail fast if it's not going anywhere. But sometimes if it's not working and it takes a while for you to adjust, that's really good. You're learning to be an entrepreneur, and maybe your first couple of businesses fail, but you learn a lot with it. But investors don't want you to learn on their paycheck. So fail fast is really not a way to go. Don't launch if you don't know who your customers are going to be, if you don't know what they want, if you don't know that they're going to buy into your idea and your product. So let's not look at failing fast. I think the age of that is now over, and the age of idea validation has begun really. An idea validation itself, I mean, it's simply finding out if there's a customer need for your idea and having data to prove it. That's really all it is. It's a scientific method. It's the scientific part of being an entrepreneur, not the sort of artistic part of being an entrepreneur here. And it's all about taking a scientific approach, about having a hypothesis. You know, I think this solves a particular customer problem, and it's about developing your hypothesis and looking at its feasibility, its viability, and its desirability. And I'll try not to get too technical on this talk, because idea validation can at some stages get quite technical, but it is about testing your hypothesis. It's about experimenting. It's about looking at this feasibility, viability, and desirability of your products. And this move towards doing validation, this move towards testing your hypothesis started, well, really, it's probably started about 30 years ago in sort of towards the mainstream of starting businesses. And I like to say sort of there's some of the heroes in the past here that I'd like to mention. You know, there's people like Steve Blank, and he's one of these sort of the founders of this customer-centric movement, early sort of Silicon Valley person from the early 90s, and taking this sort of customer model. But more recently, we'll have heard of things like the lean startup model, which is more when you reach the product stage. But there's a gentleman called Eric Ries who's developed the lean startup model. Great book to read. It's pretty much the same way of going about validation as you would at the idea stage, but it takes it to the product stage, the MVP stage. Really good book to read. I can put that in the chat if people are interested in that. But there are some other heroes in this arena, and some really good heroes. So I want to, Alex Osterwalder is really well known. There's a great book, or a number of books that he's written. As you can see, I'm a bit of a geek in this area. So I'm reading his 44 experiments to rapid experimentation. There's some interesting stuff, and there's a lot being written in this space to do with validation. But the basics of it and the methodology behind putting the customer at the center of launching your business all starts with, in pretty much all of these cases, we look at starting with a business canvas. So none of these long-wieldy business plans that we write for investors, all these fantasy documents about the profits we're all going to make in 3 years' time and all of that. Thanks to Stefania. The Strategizer book's brilliant. So these canvases, these one pages are really, really important to frame your business. And the business model canvas is the one that's probably the most known of these. Personally, and within the 12 Ronnies group and what we're talking about, when we've been putting our idea validation course and things together, we quite like the lean canvas. They're not ours, but they're canvases that you can work with. Feel free, look them up on the internet, but they're really good starting points to frame your idea, looking at the feasibility and viability of your idea. In the canvas, it also talks about customer profiles, but the second stage of all of this is really about of your validation is expanding on your customer profiles. This is so important to understand what the profiles of your customers are, really diving deep into them, almost giving them names. If you're looking at men over 50, okay, without any hair, call them Simon. Okay, if that's a customer profile, give him an avatar. What's Simon's touch points if I wanted to market to him? I'm not on TikTok. Okay, my daughter is, but you'd be wasting your time targeting the over 50s with TikTok most of the time. So it's really getting into the profile. What drives them in the domain of your idea as well. And this is where speaking to them, understanding them, interviewing them is a really, really good way to get to understand people's driving forces. But you have to build up a profile of how to communicate with them, because once you've got the customer profile or the customer profiles and the different ones of them, and this can be B2B as well as B2C as well. So it doesn't just have to be an individual, but you may look at the individuals within the organizations. But as soon as you've got these customer profiles, these customer personas, you're now ready to do the key job of an entrepreneur, the scientific job, idea validation, experimenting with them now. It's all about experimenting. It's all about testing your hypothesis with the people that you think are going to buy your products, or that are going to be interested in your products. And when I say idea validation to people, many people, and these are often in respected business schools, think this is surveying people. This is, it's fine speaking to them about what drives them, but surveying them about your idea, I actually wouldn't recommend, unless you're going to use a professional survey company that knows what they're doing here. I think surveys are dangerous and misleading. People lie. I'm sorry, but people tell you what you want to hear. People are lazy. They don't want to fill in 35 questions when they've got better things to do. So they'll tick strongly agree or number one or whatever it is. So be really careful, because if you're going to use that as validation data, it could completely mislead your idea and the way you're going to launch your business. So I'm personally not a great fan of surveys. And if you want to take that route, I would engage professionals to help you in that part of things. What I am a fan of is running validation experiments where you're testing people and they don't know they're being tested. They don't know they're being validated. And there are lots of different experiments. And these are the sorts of things that we help people get involved with, the sort of experiments. So there are weaker experiments, weaker validation experiments, going right the way through to some of the stronger ones. And what I would put in the weaker categories, but they're really important to do at the beginning, are things like a landing page. So they're easy to do. Put up a landing page about your idea, what it is. And with the landing page, collect email addresses for people that are interested, because you can send them more information. Are you interested in finding out more? What happens here is, first of all, if they haven't bounced off your page, that's a really big positive. Most of the time, people bounce off the page as soon as they look at this idea. No, not interested, bounce off. If they haven't bounced off and they've given their email address, there's a level of interest. Doesn't tell you an awful lot, but it does tell you that there's a level of interest. And then if you can get into, if these are the people that you targeted on LinkedIn that are over 50 that meet my profile, you start to build up a picture of whether there's interest. And there's lots of tools for building landing pages that are simple and you don't have to be an expert on. You know, my personal favorite, and there's lots out there, the one I use, I now use MailChimp of all things for landing pages. It offers landing pages now. It's not just about mailing people. And the good thing there is you can incorporate putting, they collect your email address, so it's collecting them into a database, and all your GDPR is looked after. So just look at, there's so many free tools out there. And I would say when we get into sort of these tools and when we're running them, look first of all for what's free. There's plenty out there that's free. What you want to do is you want to be the entrepreneur. You want to be the one doing the validation. You want to be the one that's using these tools, not paying somebody else to be the entrepreneur. It's really important that you're at the cutting edge of being the entrepreneur of your business and the customers. So it's a bit about the proverb of fishing or teaching a man to fish. You know, you want to know how to fish. You want to know how to be the entrepreneur, not farm it out. So I would just be, I would find the tools that suit yourselves. And there's lots out there. And there's lots of different experiments. And they go by some great names. There's mock sales, and there's fake doors, and there's broken promise tests, and there's really weird and wonderful tests you can go through, and you can put up videos to show what you're doing. This is how Dropbox launched at the idea stage. I mean, it's a really successful example of a company that didn't build a product. I actually, from reading their story, don't think they really looked into the viability enough of or should I say the feasibility of their product. They were pretty sure they could build this file sharing sort of application and storage, but they weren't sure whether anybody would want it if they built it. So they built a video of how they thought Dropbox would work if they were going to build it, sent it out to the customer groups asking for feedback and asking for who would be interested, and give me your email address, and got a really big response, encouraging them to actually develop the product. So the video explainers work quite well, but video explainers are a next step down. They're a medium level validation because they start to cost money to do. If you're going to, or if you can do it yourself, really good, but sometimes you need people to do these things. And as I mentioned, you have these things like fake door techniques, where you put up what you're selling as if you're going to sell it on your website, and when they go to purchase, they click on purchase, and it's actually a fake door. What comes up is coming soon, but you've seen that there's a strong level of interest. They've clicked to purchase because you've said it's $17.99. You know, you've really jumped into some of the deeper parts of validation. Yeah, there's all these smoke tests. You know, mock sale takes it even a sort of slight stage further, where you put up an order form for it, and then once you put the order in, an email comes back to you saying we'll notify you when it's ready and when the product's ready, and we can then start to take your money. So there's lots of ways of doing this, lots of validation techniques that I don't really want to go into the depth. I can talk about it maybe in the chat, but what I do want to mention as I'm starting to close is that it's not just the idea that's being validated here, and this is important to take a moment to think about. Doing idea validation, filling in a canvas, looking at your customer profiles and who's going to buy it, running experiment after experiment, different types, isn't just validating your idea, it's validating you as an entrepreneur. This is the key skill of an entrepreneur. So this is so important that you learn how to do this and learn the techniques to do this. It's we're in a really high risk environment here, risk and uncertainty. This is, you know, launching a business. It's the most risk and uncertainty at the business stage, and we can avoid a lot of it and minimize a lot of it by looking at customer need for what we're doing the idea validation. Now, these techniques I'm talking about, and there are plenty of others. You know, there's, as I say in this book here, there's 44. I run a sheet with people where there's 11 main experiments that we look at running, so slightly condensed view of this. It goes from non-technical to slightly more technical on this, but there's new solutions coming out all the time. And I would say that we're going to see a rapid movement towards more AI-driven solutions. This is data science. When we're starting to collect data and validate data, I think there's going to be some great products coming out in the near future that are more AI-driven. And even myself, within 12 Ronnies and some of the people we're working with, we're looking at also other simpler ways to do strong validation. So this will move on quite quickly. But I'd like to open the floor to questions rather than talking about it in more detail now. Thank you very much for listening. And again, my contact details, I think Michael said, are in sort of all the chat part of it, but feel free to get hold of me on LinkedIn. Feel free to contact me, simon@12ronnies.com. Feel free to join Founders and Mentors. There's a lot of touch points at which you can get hold of me. Thank you for your time. And Michael, maybe there's some questions for me.
Thank you very much for the insight, Simon. I think that not only the topic, but also your presentation hits the interest of the people, because we have some questions. Maybe Estefania, you collected them, or should I read them?
So there was a comment. Well, there were a few comments, and so the first one I wrote it actually in the chat. Let's go. Yeah. I think there was like Mahmoud, anyway, so raising his hand. I'm going to look in the chat about this other talk. So you want to say something?
Mahmoud,
can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, I don't know if you can hear me from my side. Okay,
Yeah.
you know, when you said, for example, when you validate a business idea, could you like use market research to validate your business idea as an alternative to using landing page?
Yeah, I mean, market research is really, really important at the beginning of this. I mean, I've missed out a couple of early steps. For instance, check no one else is doing exactly what your idea is before you go out and do any of this. You know, it's often you see people go, I've got this really great idea and this is what I'm going to do. And you say, well, if you just do a simple Google search, you'll see half a dozen companies doing this or not doing. There's also a lot of data on what you do, but the market research data isn't validating you, isn't validating how you're going to get to the market. And if it's exactly the same as somebody else is doing in exactly the same way, you probably want to question where your innovation is and why you. But yes, market research data, the more you can frame what you're doing, the better. But I don't think it's a substitute for you doing validation on your customers.
Okay, but okay, so what's the best way to validate? So using landing page?
No, a landing page is not the best way. It's an early way. It's a cheap, well, it should be free if you do it properly, a way of getting to understand if there's a feel for your idea out there. But there are much stronger ways of doing this. If somebody, let's say if you run a pre-sale, if somebody actually buys your product in a pre-sale, so you now know the price, you now know that they're interested. As soon as people part with money, you know they're interested. So there are stronger ways than running landing pages, and there's a lot in between running pre-sales as well. But landing page is just one of them. It's a simple, quick way to get started to frame your idea.
That's fine. But as you said, that you could use surveys to validate your idea, right?
No, I didn't. I think surveys is a really bad way of doing it, Mahmoud.
Oh, that's fine.
Sorry, I'm just if there's survey people here or somebody from SurveyMonkey, I do apologize, and you can correct me. It's my viewpoint.
There are actually in the chat a couple of questions. They are related, so I just joined them together. The first one was about landing pages, and if you could give some tips about how to do a landing page or the tools that you use. I mean, either it's a Wix, WordPress, or whatever, or if you use a specific plugin. And the second question is related to the same landing page topic, which is how do you then attract people to the landing page? Because the whole point of the landing page is not only to create it, right? You can create it and then it's like no traffic. How you get people going to the landing page?
I like the second part of the question more than the first part. Landing page, there are so many places. It's your preference to where you choose to find landing. Whether you mentioned WordPress, I mentioned MailChimp. There are so many. If you just have to Google it and find out what you're comfortable with. And I'm not here to promote any particular company on that, but it's what you're familiar with. But you shouldn't have to pay an organization to do it for you. Because this is weaker validation. There should be plenty of free places you can do. What you're essentially doing with a landing page is you're not trying to find out. This isn't later stage looking at a product or your brand or things like that. This is about your idea. So you're not trying to get the most perfect page here with the right colors, with the right logos or anything like that. You're putting up something that's simple, that's clean, that's clear about what your idea is. And you're looking at then getting somebody to jump through a hurdle, i.e. give an email address or do something, click here to go to somewhere else. It's all about them getting them to do something as a method of validation. If you've also connected things like Google Analytics to it, you can start to look at bounce rates and you can start to get a feel of things and get a little bit more technical. You know, if you've promoted it on Facebook, you can put Facebook pixels on there. There are various ways, and a lot of these landing pages or companies that offer landing pages have all of that built in or can help you do that. So the first part of it is just keep it simple. Just keep it really, really simple. You're trying to find out if somebody's interested in the idea, and that's all you really want to do. The second part, and this is the part I like, or I think it's a really good question, is, so how do you get people to come to your landing page? Well, if you just put up a landing page and leave it there, I'd be really surprised if people come to it and it validates your idea. Part of your job here, or the big part of your job, is to find customers. So how would you find customers if you had the product built? Who would your customers be? Would you be getting somebody else to do the work? Would you be, so a lot of this is coming back to what I mentioned about your customer profiles and where do your customers sit? Do you now want to put it into a LinkedIn group that's to do with that particular type of customer profile? Are they on Discord or TikTok if they're a younger age group? It's about you experimenting with putting that landing. It's just a link. It's just a link explaining why people should click on that link. And it's a way of you understanding yourself how you're going to get to customers. You know, you might think, well, I'm going to sell it on Amazon. Okay, that's where I'm really going to go. But who's going to buy it? First of all, you want to really look at your customer profiles. So the work is, no one's going to do the work for you. You're the entrepreneur. You've got to go out and find out where you want to send your links to, the links to your landing page.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Simon. Is anyone else in the room who would like to speak out the question? Okay, Crystal, yes, please. Unmute yourself.
Okay, thanks, Simon, for presenting.
Pleasure.
I have a question. So what are your thoughts on having a different business name while you're validating the idea, just in case the idea doesn't work and then you're launching and then people have this thought in their mind like, oh no, I don't want to get this idea. Do you understand what I'm
Yeah, I do. Actually, I'm really a big fan. It depends what you're testing here. I mean, it's all about what you're testing, but I'm a really big fan of not testing your brand or your name at the idea stage. So if you think your brand is, Simon's shoes, and that's what you want to call it, and you got your colors for it, don't start off with Simon's shoes, okay, as your brand. Just give it something just fairly nondescript. I wouldn't go with your A game on your brand yet, because you don't know your customers yet. And while I'm not a brand expert, I did listen to a brand expert talk not so long ago that was talking about, don't build the brand for yourself, build it for your customers. It's got to represent your, so your name and even your web domain, don't go with your A game there. That's going to evolve. Your business is going to evolve, and you're going to come towards that later. It's about your idea right now.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Can I add something on that point?
Oh, hello.
Yes, it's Roy, I think, from
Point of your name. There is, I agree with what Simon said, but there's a little nuance to it. If you're going to be looking for investors, definitely do not use your name at the beginning, because they blackball. And once you've used your name and they've rejected you, you will never get in the door again.
I also don't think the focus should be on investors at this stage anyway.
No, that's not every startup needs them either.
Yeah.
But if that is going to be an issue, then it's a very bad idea to use the name. That comes last.
Hmm. Thank you, Roy. Thank you.
I also personally agree that it's not only the idea that you have to validate, or also neither the branding, but also the price sometimes, because you have to do little experiments, and the way you sell it. There was another message, but the chat is going so fast that I lost it, and there was someone else who wanted to mention something. You can raise your hand and maybe just express yourself, because I got
Moi, actually, I saw your question with giving away the idea. Maybe Moi, you could say your question, ask your question personally.
Yes, hello. Thanks very much for a great talk. I was wondering if that in the idea validation stage should we be worried about giving away too much of our idea?
Yeah, that's an important question to look at from, and it's partly a personal point of view and partly depends on your idea. If your idea's a scientific discovery, a new invention, something that is heavy innovation in that respect, I wouldn't be putting your idea up on a crowd platform, because you'd probably want to look at protecting the intellectual property of an idea like that right from the beginning. So I would be speaking to a patent attorney or speaking to an intellectual property specialist. If your idea involves deep technology or scientific discovery, but most ideas are just a different way of doing things using a technology or using another methodology. And unfortunately, and I'm guilty of that as well, we all rate our ideas as game changers, and we all think, gosh, this is, I don't want somebody to steal it. Well, it's so hard to get customers to buy it, let alone anybody to steal it. In most cases, just go and do it. And if you're too afraid to get your idea out there, it's how are you going to market it? Are you going to build it first and hope? We're in a high failure rate environment here. You're going to build it, you're going to spend all your money not telling anybody about it, and then go to market when it's built and hope that there's a customer need. It's risky. In my opinion, getting the idea out there. By the way, if you're worried about the intellectual property side of it, talk about what it solves. Don't talk about how it solves it. So talk about the commercial aspects of your idea. That's what you're getting people into to purchase anyway, not how it actually works if it's technical. So you don't have to give away the crown jewels of the IP. You can talk about its commercial aspects if you're worried about that part. But I'm definitely from the camp of showcasing your ideas as early as possible to try and find out what customers want, rather than hiding them from customers, building something and then showing it to customers and hoping that everybody's on the same page.
Thanks,
I hope that answers your question, Mo.
Definitely. Thanks very much.
So we have another hand raised from Katrina Kessler. Maybe Katrina, would you like to say your question?
Thank you. Sorry, I can't turn the video on. I have bad internet connection. Yeah. So Simon, what do you think about the idea of offering a money back guarantee for a service? Do you think that's a good idea, or does that just sound really sort of hokey dokey? Or
well, so this is a money back. So we're talking at the idea stage here, yes?
Yes.
And we're saying, so what's our offer? So we're offering a service, and we're saying part of the sales offer is you can purchase it for $20, but there's a money back guarantee on it if it's not what you want. Is
yeah, except it's more like for the customer, there would be an investment of 5 to 10 hours of their time at some hourly rate that I haven't figured out yet. Let's say maybe, I don't know. I really actually have no idea. Let's just say $100 just to put a figure out there. So they would be investing somewhere between 500 and 1,000 before they get the end product, but at the service that the service provides. Then after that, they could get their money back if they're not satisfied.
Katrina, the simple answer to that is that's part of your idea offering. So if you frame that you put to your customer profiles to see whether this is something they're interested now in hearing more about, or even moving towards some sort of pre-sale, or I mentioned these fake doors, these other types of techniques. It's something I would put in the sales message to test it. So you can do at idea stage all of the A/B testing. By the way, I didn't go into that of saying, well, to one customer group, you put a landing page with the customer back guarantee, and to a money back guarantee, and another landing page to the same sort of group, but a different set of people in that group, one without it. And you can start to test it. It's cheap testing. It's easy to it just means you have to do the entrepreneur's work, but you can do A/B testing at idea validations. It doesn't have to be just at the product level. You can do it at the idea level.
I guess my idea probably works better after the business is launched as the business model.
Well, you want to find out if people are interested first, Katrina, before spending too much time and money.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mention this idea is something that is in demand. It's something I did in the past, actually for 10 years, but I would be doing it in a more complex form this time around.
Okay. As long as you know who you're selling it to, and there's a need for it, that's what you're trying to establish at this stage.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Pleasure.
We have one question in chat from Aaron. What is your point of view, Simon, on the product market fit as a part of the business model canvas. So I guess this question whether this idea validation, customer fit is a part of business model canvas, should it be somehow even extended?
Yes, I mean, product market fit is all part of this process. As long as you're not building the product at the idea stage, having the going through understanding if there's a product market fit. I mean, you're just replacing the word product with idea here. It's the idea and the product are one and the same to the customer here. This is you're pretending your product can be, you know, it's easy to do and it's going to be there, and you're testing the fit. So it is essentially the same thing. It is essentially the same thing. It's just a lot of people think product market fit at the product stage rather than the idea stage. We're going a stage earlier to try and save you a lot of the problems.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other questions? Maybe we have overlooked questions from the chat, so please feel free to ask them in person.
Christoph?
Yes, so I had a question about when you said fake door. So one of my, I guess my thoughts or concerns is that misleading? Does that seem like trickery?
Yeah.
How do people, like, how have they responded to that in your experience?
It is trickery. It is, and the name makes it sound even worse. The name makes it sound like you're deliberately, which you are, tricking people. Remember, we're entrepreneurs here, and as long as it's we can keep within the ethics of this, we're experimenting and we're taking things. How can I best put it? A lot of entrepreneurs would prefer to ask for forgiveness rather than permission to put some things out there, as you know, as long as it's sort of ethical. And this fake door side of things is more a way of, you know, you're hoping you don't get a bad rep for it by somebody clicking on it and it's saying coming soon. You have to be a little bit careful with these things, but that's why a lot depends on running different types of validation experiments. If you're getting people clicking on this fake door, you might want to move towards offering it at a pre-sale and things like that. So you start to run through into a deeper experiment that has less trickery in this. But part of it is smoke and mirrors. You're testing people, you're validating your ideas. You know, you haven't produced the product yet. But I understand the question. But a lot of organizations do launch that way.
Thank you.
So any other questions, remarks, comments?
There's a comment from Dixie talking about saving plastics, and if anyone knows that's out of right now the validation topic, grants for green projects.
Sorry.
Daisy, she says it's ideas on the air, not a real plan. I would recommend, maybe I can also say, I would recommend to do like a very basic prototype, also like no need for a landing page, but a Facebook page sometimes, or according the channel will depend on where do you think that your target audience is, and then check this before going to check for grants. Otherwise, we are in the loop of like constant looking for information. We'll never move on. So I think in this case, Simon, well, Simon's very right. You first should validate the idea before, you know, going any further.
Yeah, we have a new question,
Yes,
a bunch of new questions from Ian. For example, he is asking what would you consider validation success or progress if you're getting a mixed bag of feedbacks, like 30% say they would definitely use it, 30% they say not, and another third say, yeah, maybe. With various tactics of marketing, this is the outcome. So how sharp could be the outcome of idea validation product testing?
Yeah, well, I think it doesn't sound like the data that you've presented there is conclusive one way or another. And what I certainly wouldn't jump onto this being a fabulous idea if it isn't something that the majority of the people you're targeting think it's a good idea. You know, this is partly data science here, and what is statistically significant, and what is, you know, you can jump into the data in different ways. But if you're going to launch a business that you're going to spend your next few months or years devoting towards, you don't want to jump into it with some wishy-washy data that, oh, I'm not really sure if they're interested or not. You know, this is where you want to do your work up front. This is where you want to spend your time when you're not having to pay suppliers and staff and all the big costs. This is when you've got the time to do it. You can have another job on the go, and you can be doing this in the evenings or lunchtime. This is the time to do the experiments and to get yourself to data that you feel is conclusive. Or one of the things that we're doing with our idea validation course is we're having assessors to look at the data, to look at the business model canvas, to look at the customer profiles, and to look at the validation data, to give a steer from an independent source of how conclusive it is. But in the example you gave, I wouldn't say that's particularly conclusive that it's a good idea or not.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Daniel has a question. Daniel Snyder. Okay, it's not there.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes.
Which one? Because I asked two questions.
Okay, just go for it. Whatever it was the last one I just seen. The things like the chat is going also very fast. Ask whatever you want.
Yeah. I was wondering if you have a resource that you recommend that lists and explains these various strategies beyond the fake door test and pre-sale.
Yeah, so there's some of the standard books that I mentioned earlier. Yep. that go into the details here. I co-authored a course on idea validation sitting on our platform that goes through the different techniques and suggests where you can, the tools that you can use to do them, and dives into more detail than I've gone through today. There's plenty of information if you want to do research on the internet about these things, you can speak to myself and some of the mentors on the platform, on our founders and mentors, and we can probably point you in some of the directions depending on the sort of validation you're looking at doing, Daniel.
Thank you.
Shall I mean, it might be worth, I don't know whether it's worth, Michael, putting a link to the course or at a later stage to people.
Yes, please. I mean, feel free, of course, if you like, you just put it into the chat. Okay. It's I'm also part of the network as a mentor, and it's a Vivid platform, Vivid a community. So I just can recommend also to join in and get different perspectives from fellow entrepreneurs or from mentors or service providers.
Sure. Is there any more questions while I'm just putting this into the chat box?
7 p.m. I don't know if there's any other questions. They can do it now, or we have been sharing all the links, all the contacts also on the chat. Some people are asking if the recording is going to be shared. I can send an email because there was like a lot of people asking for the recording of the chat because like many people were like sharing a lot of links and it was really fast. It was some fire today. Then I will definitely send an email with you know, the recap and the recording, also with the chat and the contacts from everyone here.
Yeah.
And people can interact directly also with you, Simon. Definitely also on the community of 12 Ronnies.
Okay, that's brilliant. I put in the chat as well a link to the course that we run, but it's you know, there as I would say, there's a lot of information about this on the internet. It's some idea validation. I just want to reiterate, is the most important skill that an entrepreneur needs to have in their armory, and it's something you don't really want somebody else to be doing on your behalf if this is your business. So I would spend time learning about this subject.
There is one more question. I'm also curious about it. Where did 12 Ronnies name derive from?
Okay, that's a nice question. If that's the last question to finish from, yeah. Well, as people will probably know, us Brits, we like to go to pubs, and we like to chat in pubs about ideas. And like most business ideas that I've certainly been involved in, this originated from a pub chat. Myself and the name came, myself and Jake Shaw, we're having a pint and we were talking about some work I've been doing where it's actually on the intellectual property side of things, of funding patent applications using investors to buy into the intellectual property. So it was getting investors to effectively fund inventors' intellectual property. But the problem with this, in what we were doing, is investors don't trust inventors to commercialize what they're doing. It just doesn't work. They need somebody that's going to commercialize it, and it's normally not the inventor. So we were looking at how can we put together inventors and investors, inventors and commercial entrepreneurs to make something investable. And so it was about startup teams, and we were chatting about it, and we were thinking, well, famous teams, and you know, a couple of drinks later, we're looking at comedy teams. And there's a comedy team in the UK back in the 80s, I think, the Two Ronnies, some of you will heard of, and they did a sketch called 12 Ronnies. Imagine how funny we'd be if there was 12 of us. And we thought, yeah, team building, this is how we do it. Let's do it that way. So we started off with the name 12 Ronnies, about how we put these teams together. Actually, the teams that we've ended up looking at putting together are founders and mentors, looking at putting the mentors at the heart of the business, rather than trying to get an inventor who's really possessive about it's their baby to share it with a commercial entrepreneur. So that's where the name came from. It wasn't supposed to, it was supposed to just be a name that we started off with, but it stuck, and it's great fun in it, and it sums us up. It really sums us up. And by the way, none of us are called Ronnie, and there isn't 12 of us. And we're crazy. We had a 13th Ronnie before we had a 6th Ronnie. So that gives you an idea of what a crazy bunch of people we are.